Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Cody Kinsey. I am a security researcher with Varonis, and I have with me today Michael 2, James. James, aka Michael 2, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. So today we are going to be continuing our operating system series where we are focusing on operating systems that are traditionally seen as security focused or hacker operating systems. And we've pretty much just been making James try them out and see how difficult they are to get started with a little bit of experience using different operating systems kind of guiding his way. So James, of the different operating systems we've tried, which one has been the hardest to work with so far?
The hardest work was so far. They've all been pretty similar. I would say probably Blackarch has been the most difficult to install. OpenBSD would be hard to install, but it does a lot of stuff for you by default, so it's not terrible. So I think it's a close second, but
So
they're close.
that's the one we're going to focus on today. We've gotten a couple requests for it, and also we've covered it on Nullbyte in the past. And it's traditionally been seen as a very secure operating system because, well, there's a lot of reasons, but in particular, there's a lot of emphasis on the quality of code that goes into the project to the point that sometimes other programs are rewritten before they are allowed into OpenBSD. So while James and I were discussing, this is not something where you can just go ahead and just take a GitHub repository and expect things to go really smoothly because you're going to be compiling the code yourself. Like, this is something that takes a little bit more effort, but again, if you're really focused on security, then this is an operating system that has a good track record for that and some really interesting stories that contributed to its development as well. So James, what have you learned about OpenBSD in all of your deep experience with it?
My deep experience in my like half a day's worth of research, um, it looks like one of their big focuses on security. They don't seem to sort of like the developers outlook on this seems to be like, we made this for us if you want to use it. Yes, it's a development platform. It's meant to be, their big thing is security by default, and then you add stuff and supposedly you can make it insecure, but at that point it's your fault and you added it. So yes.
So instead of having everything set to convenience like, Mac OS, where everything is automatically trying to be sharing and everything until there's a security issues that kind of slaps their hands back, this is the opposite where everything is locked down. And if you want to use anything or have anything connect anything, you need to actually tell it that it can do that, because a lot of attention to detail has gone into separating programs from doing things that they shouldn't be doing at like the operating system level, which can really mess up things that you're trying to do, but it also makes it much harder in some ways to attack than other operating systems.
Yeah.
So who would this operating system be ideal for? If you are just somebody that's looking at alternative distributions you can run or alternative operating systems you can run, what is the difference that is really important for for beginners to understand about OpenBSD versus, maybe trying out like Parrot Security OS?
Right. So with all the other operating systems we've covered, they have been based on major Linux distributions. So as in Kali and Parrot, I think are both based on Debian. We haven't covered Ubuntu, but Ubuntu is also based on Debian. Arch is another major kind of parent sort of operating system, and based on that, you have Blackarch and Manjaro. So, Unix is also based off of Debian. So those are like the two big ones that things tend to get based off of. Then there's also sort of Fedora and a couple other distributions, but those are all Linux. The difference here is that while OpenBSD is still Unix, I don't think, I want to just double check this because I don't want to get it wrong, but I don't think it actually qualifies
As being
as
Linux?
Unix. Linux even, sorry. Yeah, no, it's not.
It's good to check, because some nerds are going to yell at you, and it's inevitable when making such a bold statement that somebody in the comments is going to argue. But it is interesting that this is not something that is, I guess, like the family tree of this is a little bit more interesting than some of the other distributions that we've discussed.
Yeah, it's very different to the other things we've looked at, because everything else runs on a Linux kernel. This doesn't. So it's kind of interesting. Most people probably haven't heard of OpenBSD. I hadn't heard a lot about it until today when I kind of looked into it. So one thing that you might have seen that's involved in their project is they took SSH and modded it or rewrote it to make it open SSH, which is now kind of the de facto SSH server that everybody runs on pretty much every server ever.
Yeah.
So that's somewhere you might have seen some software made by them.
Yeah, and it turns out I didn't know this, but there's like some core components of Android that are the code is taken from the OpenBSD project. So it actually crops up in a lot of places that you wouldn't expect, just because of the core tenets of rewriting code for really security conscious practices and making sure that the quality of the code is extremely thoroughly vetted and has a lot of attention paid to it. It's just kind of an unusual way of doing this. And the benefit of that is that they haven't had very many incidents in terms of having people find very serious vulnerabilities in their code, unless you go and start adding stuff.
Yeah, of course. But as you said, in the base operating system as it ships, there have been very few instances. I think there was I did very little research into this, but I think there was three documented
That's the number I was going to say. Yeah.
cases of where the out of the box system could be exploited remotely and gained access to.
Yeah, so I was even reading on the Wikipedia article for this that at some point the operating system, because it was designed to be secure, had attracted the attention of the FBI, and they had apparently attempted to pay a developer at OpenBSD to poison the cryptography libraries and make it so that it was possible for them to get backdoor into communication or otherwise just make the encryption that the entire operating system is based on less strong. So as soon as they found that out, I think this was because they received a letter from the former technical director at the FBI. They invited the community to poke at the code and check the math and make sure there was no nefarious backdoor there. And nobody was able to find anything. They found some bugs, but they didn't find anything that seemed really that serious. So it's kind of still an interesting incident where it almost would have been a relief if they found the backdoor, even though it would have been pretty devastating. But just the fact that there was that rumor from someone a pretty respectable position who might know about it, and then they couldn't find anything. Either it's a really, really good backdoor, or some of the best open source developers in cryptography couldn't find one. So it's kind of an interesting anecdote from the development of OpenBSD. But yeah, it's just also very cool that because of their philosophy for how the code has to be in order to be accepted into their project, it tends to be taken and used in other places. And there's a lot of third-party products that are based on OpenBSD that have a focus on security, because also OpenBSD is kind of designed to be a server and act as it can act as kind of whatever you want, as a router or as a VPN or whatever. So there's a lot of products that use that strength to just basically build devices that are based on OpenBSD and do things like routing or VPN access or things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Their big thing is that it's free and they want to be the most secure Unix operating system. So, I mean, I don't feel qualified to attest to that, but that's what they want to be. That's what they claim to be. They say they are thought of as the most secure Unix-like operating system.
I mean, I would immediately say thought of by whom, but they've neglected to provide us that information, so we could only speculate. But cool. All right. So this is a bit more of a deep dive than, just running another Debian operating system or jumping from Debian to Arch. Again, this is a different flavor of Unix. And even I don't use this operating system. So every time I interact with it, I have to be reminded of this because I just kind of forget it. But my friend Ian, who used to write for Nullbyte, wrote a very good article on this. And I remember as I was editing it, that I was just this seems like a weird operating system. It is very different, even from Arch and some of the other kind of strange flavors of Linux that we've encountered. So this one is, a little bit different, kind of cool, and very useful for people who might want to take that deep dive into some of the more secure sides of operating systems that are maybe a little bit less usable and take a little bit more skill or Linux experience, or not Linux, but Unix experience to figure out what's going on in some cases, or what the computer is asking you to do.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's probably not like a whole lot more difficult. It's just very different. So the more difficult aspect is that a lot of applications that you're used to just won't run on OpenBSD because, like for instance, we wanted to run the Hunatur on
Hmm.
here, and I found out that you can't actually directly compile Rust for OpenBSD. So,
Huh.
which is
Okay, so
like
that there are some trade-offs, especially if you're like, I don't know, like a Rust fanboy of some sort.
like me. So I mean, like that. I mean, that could obviously change. Like they, somebody, maybe even the OpenBSD team could implement that. But at the minute, that's the case. And I haven't like done extensive research into other programming languages, but I can imagine that'll be the case for a few of these sort of smaller, newer languages that you just can't directly compile them on OpenBSD. So some of your applications aren't going to run at all on there unless you want to port them, and others will you'll need to compile them yourself. So
Interesting.
that's the sort of trade-off that you're one of the trade-offs anyway that you're looking at.
So I would love to know just to talk smack if OpenBSD supports Go, like supports compiling Go.
We don't need to talk about that. I
Okay,
don't
all
know.
right. Just because it would be funny if like the OpenBSD team like cast their vote by just like choosing to support Go but not Rust.
I mean,
Um,
it's not like OpenBSD. I kind of looked into it a little bit on the Rust side of things, at least. And there was like an issue open that kind of looked like it was somebody from the OpenBSD team, but I wasn't sure. And it was like, it said, we would like to have Rust support. And they said, no, that would be hard. So do it yourself. And they haven't done it themselves, is what it looked like. So, that's where that's at from what I could see on the GitHub for Rust
yeah,
C.
and casually looking at Go, I would just to see if it just says yes or no. It seems like not only no, but well, I don't know. It seems like a mess is the answer. It seems like it's one of those things where you start using like C Go, and it's like I'm sorry, you're using like a C wrapper for Go, like you might as well just code in C. Like okay. Um,
Yeah,
So there are definitely some trade-offs when it comes to things that might not work the same way on another operating system that you're used to. So just again, if you're using something that's security first, convenience second, guess what? There may be trade-offs, and we will explore some of those today. But Rust is one of them. So unfortunately, the beautiful cross-platform serial monitor that Jamz wrote now has the distinction of being a almost cross-platform
hey, 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 hey.
serial monitor.
Hey, listen, it runs on Linux,
Uh,
Mac, and Windows, just not OpenBSD. The other interesting thing is that it actually you can compile Rust, I think, if memory serves, on FreeBSD,
mm,
which is the more popular BSD sort of operating system, but not OpenBSD. So I'm not sure why that is. But OpenBSD is not the most popular operating system that looks like this sort of structure, which I thought was interesting because I mean, I don't hear a lot about these in general, so I guess that's not a huge surprise, but apparently FreeBSD is more popular.
yeah, I like some of these installations. I've never heard of them until we're doing a workshop. And then like somebody's like, I can't connect like my D1 Mini to my distribution, and they like plug it in, and it's some distro I've never heard of. I'm like, I'm sorry, why are you running Temple OS? Like, I don't know the situation with the drivers. Like, I don't know anything with this. Like, and
Tempo.
yeah, so you never know like who's gonna like show up with some like weird operating system that like you've never heard of. And OpenBSD is kind of one of those because I wouldn't know how to troubleshoot it because I don't know what the defaults are on it because it's such I guess a niche operating system that I don't encounter very often.
I would hope somebody coming to a workshop wouldn't be running OpenBSD.
Oh no, there have been people who have like these old ThinkPads that are just running operating systems that are just not anything I've ever seen before. And I've seen like a good amount of operating systems. And trying to troubleshoot these people is always a lot of fun because they know more about the operating system than of course I do, but they also don't know how to get it to do anything that like connects to the internet or like I don't know, violates the privacy and sanctity of that computer. So like some people who are really serious about security will come to those hackerspace workshops, and it's a little strange.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I would expect somebody running this to kind of know what they're doing, but guess
Yeah,
not.
they would, but just they wouldn't know how to like connect to like a new piece of software or hardware that requires like drivers and other stuff. So they're just like, all right, how do I install these drivers? I'm like, oh, are you running? And then once I find out, I'm just like, I am so sorry. Like you're like, yeah, I guess you have to compile the drivers. Like I don't even. All right, good luck. Like, so I just
Good luck.
in some cases, like they might even have like just like hardware problems where like it's just those drivers like are not something that like were meant to be put on BSD or ever intended, and like you have to figure it out. So.
Write your own drivers.
Yeah, it's easy.
Yeah, 10-minute project. Yeah, easy.
All right,
All right.
so with that disclaimer, let's go ahead and get started and show where our journey with OpenBSD shall begin.
Exciting. Right. So now we had a lot of grouchy comments last time in the stream. People like, James, don't use the magnification thing. Just turn up the scaling. And you know what? Fine. I guess it worked. But it also was it caused a lot of other issues. So you know what? No, I'm not happy about it. But here we are. So can you see this? Is this good enough for you, Cody?
Yes, I think that's wonderful. And thank you to all the backseat drivers who, along with me, forced James to figure out the accessibility settings on his computer.
I just turned up the scaling. I don't know what you're talking about.
Wait, I'm sorry. Are you about to just start the operating system without showing the web page for OpenBSD?
My apologies. I
Okay,
forgot.
it's like you're trying to hide it. It's like you're trying to hide
Oh
it.
my!
Are
The
you
scaling? The scaling. Oh no. Anyway,
I'm sorry.
I have lots of stuff up right now, but
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just go to. You're at the FAQ. Can you go to openbsd.org?
I am on OpenBSD.org.
Yeah, but just that. Okay, can we just admire this website? Like, it looks like I'm looking at it on Netscape Navigator. Do you know what that means, James?
That sounds like something from before my time.
Yeah, like this looks like a GeoCities website. Like, yeah. Okay, I just wanted to everybody appreciate the fact that this website like looks like suspicious as hell, and like anybody who had taken like a single class on HTML could create it. So,
Listen,
all right.
they're OS developers. They're OS
They're not
developers.
being judged on the prettiness of their website. And I guarantee it doesn't track you very much.
Yeah, so only 2 remote holes in the default installation in a heck of a long time. They're very proud about the aforementioned OpenSSH thing. It's not listed here. It's listed, or is it listed here? Yeah, it is listed. They say it right on the front page, so they're very proud of that. What else? I don't know. You can look at the project goals. Should we look at the project goals?
Oh, yeah, they have a little manifesto. How cute.
Yeah, it's very cute. So 6-month releases, no serious problems sit unsolved. All this stuff that you can probably read for yourself. Bottom line, secure out of the box, free open software, good stuff. Yes, wonderful. Is there anything else you want to look at on their website?
Okay. No, there's not. I was just trying to like dig more into the into their iconography. They use the pufferfish a lot. That's kind of their official thing. If you click on that, I don't know why the fish are in the pool. Whatever, click on it. They've got some great branding. That image gets huge.
Does it? How
Yeah.
big? Oh man. Oh man.
Oh yeah, see, that's what I want to show. So as you can see on the bottom, there's a couple of very sassy puffer fish getting to know each other better in this like hotel pool, and yeah, it's great. I really like the fact that they've like branded this around the puffer fish. Like it's got some really good security vibes to it. I don't know what those ones are doing. Yeah, that seems like they're up to some crime stuff.
Exactly. Dodgy.
Yeah.
But yes, anyway, back to OpenBSD, away from their admittedly very nice art. So along the left, you hit the big download button. You've got all sorts of architectures that you can download. So you have an image, you have images and then ISOs. and more images, floppies. Can you install this on floppy?
Yeah.
Oh my, that's impressive. Okay. Anyhow, so for me, what I did is I just downloaded the install ISO for AMD 64. So that's a 64-bit processor, modern 64-bit processor anyway. And Power PC. Wow, look at all these.
Oh yeah.
So lots and lots of architectures that you can install on. There may be ARM somewhere. Can you install it for ARM? Yes, you can install it for ARM. So you could probably put this on a Pi, I guess, if you wanted to, because lots of people seem to ask that. But yes, so there's a pretty good guide here. It'll tell you exactly what you need to do. Maybe not on this page, but if you go through their FAQ, their website's pretty good, I would say, as far as things go. It's better. Maybe the install guide isn't quite as good as ours, not as detailed, but it's fairly straightforward. And the defaults within the install are pretty good. It just worked when I used the defaults, so that's probably what we're going to do this time too. Are you ready to set up a VM, Cody?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm taking a look at it, and it looks like the OpenBSD ARM64 does work on the Raspberry Pi. There's actually, if you switch over to my screen real quick, there's a list of supported hardware, and it's actually pretty extensive. There's Pinebook 64, Orange Pi. Yeah, there's just like a bunch of different things that are supported here. So hard kernel. So, oh yeah, and then the Raspberry Pi 3 and the Raspberry Pi 4, which is awesome. So it looks like there is a modification you need to do in order to change it, because otherwise it doesn't like load properly. You can't just do it exactly the same as another one, but it doesn't look like there's a lot of steps you have to run in order to get that done. So OpenBSD, just look on the arm/arm64.html and you can see more information about how to install it on Raspberry Pi if you want to do that, and then tell us if it's actually worth trying out. I would love for someone else to try that and tell us. All right, back to James.
Okay, right. So let's say you've downloaded your ISO here and you've got it set up, and I'll restart this. So you go into your Virtualbox. Cody, are you going to do your thing where you complain about parallels?
Oh, yes. So I think that if you want to use this on Mac OS, then you should probably use Parallels because it's a much smoother experience. But because they don't make it available for students for free, I actually think that you should use Virtualbox instead, even though it's painful. So even though a better experience does exist, they don't make it free for students. So currently, I recommend Virtualbox. Prepare for pain.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah,
I know exactly what you're going to do now. We've done this too many times. So, yeah, VirtualBox is kind of rough, but it's free. So here we are. Basic advice: if you're having issues, make sure you turn on virtualization in your BIOS. Otherwise, something gets enabled called Windows Virtualization Platform when you install WSL. That's another possible issue. There's a bunch of other things that can go wrong, and the errors tend to be pretty unhelpful. So try those two things. If those don't help, then have fun sitting around on Google for several hours like we've all done to get VirtualBox to work, basically. So yes, let's create our new VM. I'm going to put it in this folder. Thomas is being very insistent right now. You can talk later, Thomas. I'm going to put you down for now. And we're going to call it OpenBSD1 because I'm feeling creative, and here it detected it as a BSD operating system, and we are installing OpenBSD 64-bit.
Right. So this is also like where people who are thinking this is Linux very quickly understand that, like, wait a minute, this isn't Linux. It's not under any of the Linux distributions. This is something different.
Yeah, I actually did that the first time I was going through the install because I didn't know much about BSD operating systems at all. So I'm like, where is it? Why isn't it there under Linux? Anyway, so if we click next, we can allocate our RAM. So I'll give it 8 gigs just for the heck of it. It doesn't need that much. It's a very small operating system. And we're going to create a virtual hard disk with the default version for VirtualBox. And then we're going to dynamically allocate, which, as Cody would say if I didn't, you use the space that you use inside the operating system on your physical disk, but if you're not using it, that space will be free on your hard disk. But as you use it inside, it'll fill up to the maximum, and it's a bit slower than a fixed size disk, but you don't take up a bunch of space on your hard drive. So, in my opinion, it's worth the trade-off. Is that fair enough?
That is perfect. Yeah, nothing to add.
Wonderful. So then I'll give it 32 gigabytes. It doesn't need anywhere near that much, but just for the sake of not running into problems. And then we're going to go into settings. I'm going to up the processor count, which you probably, again, don't need to do, but why not? Because we have more cores. And then we're going to go to the storage tab. This is the important part. Click the thing that says empty. On the right, click the little CD icon and choose a disk file. Then you navigate to your, sorry, that's kind of small, but you navigate to your ISO and you select that, hit OK, start, and we should be ready to install.
Cool.
And it started on a different screen. So it threw up. Man, what is it doing? Hold on. VirtualBox is having a moment. The window has disappeared. Uh-oh. I tried to like move the window on the screen and it was just like, nah, you're not doing that today, buddy. Task Manager may be about to make an appearance. Task Manager is making an appearance. Let's try that again.
Sounds like OpenBSD got too many cores. But probably not.
It seems like VirtualBox is smoking something. Well, I can't do anything right now.
Yeah, so, if only there was a alternative solution I could offer that was free for students so they could learn to use virtualization without all the random hiccups of VirtualBox. But unfortunately, I don't know of any.
That's a shame. I mean, yeah. I'm just going to sit here for a minute and hope that things sort themselves out. Yes. It's bleeping at me like there's an alert window, but there isn't. This is exciting. Ah. Okay. Things are happening.
That's good. That's potentially good.
So here's the situation right now. I cannot Alt F4. I cannot navigate to the task manager. It's kind of a bundle of fun, to be honest with you.
All right.
Whoa. Windows, what are you doing? Can you still see everything?
Yeah, I can still see everything. Well, I can just see like your VirtualBox like not responding very much.
Yeah. Windows is now panicking because it's having trouble. Right, so I'm going to task kill. And I'm going to try that one more time. And this time you guys are going to have to take my word for it that there's a little dialog that gives you one option to select the disk. And then you get your thing, because otherwise VirtualBox will throw a fit because it wants to start on a different screen. On a different screen.
Okay.
So I'm sorry.
It looks.
This is small.
It's okay. It looks better than before, which was nothing.
Right. This is the glorious installer for OpenBSD. Can you see that well enough?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, so it gives you 4 options: shell, auto install, upgrade, or install. We're going to do a big I for install. And then the first thing is you select a keyboard layout. So you can hit a question mark here for the list. And I guess these are just the pre-installed ones. There's a few there. The default is just the ENUS keyboard. So we're going to go with the default. Hostname. What are you feeling as the host name today? Bigfoot?
Windows 95.
Windows 95. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And now we get to the part where I don't know a lot about what's going on here, but because it's virtualized, so I don't actually know what the interfaces are supposed to be called and that sort of stuff. But EM0 here in VirtualBox is the network interface that we want to be using. So that's set as default there. So if we hit enter, it will configure that one. And then you're picking if you want to set up IPv4 for it by a DHCP, or you can select none, which I presume means you're going to allocate a static IP later. But most people will want to select DCHP here because you have I think it works like most people. The standard setup is the DHCP server just ran on your router, right? That's the idea.
Hey, James, can I show you something?
Oh, no.
Okay, so over on my screen, I have followed roughly the same steps with parallels just to see like what it looks like. And okay, watch this. So if I try to type none, every time I type anything, it just types like 5 characters. So if I type none, it's just like 25 characters instead of one word. I think that it also yeah, apparently Parallels also doesn't have OpenBSD. It just has free. No, yeah, it has free BSD. So and just BSD isn't even an option. So it looks like installing this on Parallels is actually way rougher than just installing it on VirtualBox. So I rescind what I said earlier, except for the part about where this should still be free. All right, back to James.
Okay, so on VirtualBox at least I can type normally right now, but again I'm just gonna. Did I explain DHCP correctly? Again, I don't know much about networking. So
yeah, I think that was a good overview.
So again, default for us because I am a pleb DHCP man that doesn't sort his own network stuff out. And actually, I guess we're virtualized. So with DHCP, this will probably be by default probably local, isn't it? Because 10 dot whatever is not my gateway setup. So anyway, I don't know what's going on. Something's going on, but DHCP, yes, good. Now, do we want IPv6? Not right now, because although we should be, nobody uses it. And we don't need to configure another one because we just have the VLAN 0. DNS domain name. What domain name should we use, Cody?
You know what I'm going to say, so pick something else.
Okay,
good.
It is.
Great.
So, and then by default, the name servers here it's using is Cloudflare as the primary and Google as the secondary, which I guess is fine. And as the password for the root account, I'm just going to be really creative and do OpenBSD. And
I'm trying to get some troubleshooting help on my end as well.
Wonderful, cat cam.
Yeah.
So starting SSHD by default, I suppose so. Why not? Do we expect to run the X window system? And this is like their default window manager setup, desktop environment, maybe you could call it. It's very retro. If you're running this as a desktop operating system, I don't think you'd be here, but for our case, we're going to leave this as yes. If you're running a server, you'd probably say no here because you wouldn't need it, is my understanding, and then you could just run everything from command line.
Mm-hmm.
And do we want it to be started by that thing? Do I know what that thing is?
Do you want the X window system to be started by, whoa, Xenu? Okay.
Xenodem 1.
Yeah,
No.
Do not let the X window system be started by evil aliens.
Xenodem 1. I think that may mean it's not going to start by default, but we'll see. Do we want to set up a user? Normally, yes, because security is a thing, and you don't want to be logging into your root account all the time. And ideally what you'd have, especially if you're SSHing into a server, is your root login will be disabled via SSH, because otherwise people can have lots of permissions over your server, which is not something you want. But for the cases this video, we can probably just leave that as no for simplicity and log into root, because we're not using this after this video. So again, it says it right here. Root is targeted by password guessing attacks. Pub keys are safer. Allow root SSH login. Yes, no, or prohibit password. And the default is no, which is a very sensible option.
Right.
And it guessed my time zone here. We can look at the list, which is pretty standard stuff. You got UTC, US, whatever. So default disk, we only have one because we're in a VM. So that's default. And if you were dual booting or such, you could, this is where you'd mess with the partitions. But by this point, we're just going to leave it default because somebody's going to yell at me for using MBR there, but you know what? It's the default. So what do you want from me? I don't know how to partition, but yes. So, and then it kind of shows you how it's going to set things up here, which this just looks like the file layout. This is not partitions. So is it partitions? Am I being dumb? Cody, help. I don't want to say something wrong.
On the auto allocated layout for... Whoa.
Maybe this is like,
No.
I don't know why there's the sizes for the things though. That's interesting. But I guess you could edit this layout and the size allocated to different areas is what it looks like. But in this case, we should probably just leave it auto because we clearly don't really
know enough to start changing stuff. Yeah.
So then I guess it's set that up and install the sets from the disk because we have a disk that has sets in it because it's a desktop operating system and it's one of the full ones, which there's a couple of different options there when you pick your install medium. So it's, for some people, they won't do this, but for us, we have that image and it can figure it out there, or you can figure it out yourself if it can't find them and you think you have them. So again, I'm going to roll with the default sets here. And this does not contain a SHA-256 signature. Continue without verification. If you were a security conscious individual setting this up as your main operating system or your server, maybe you would want to verify what you're downloading is legitimate here.
You would definitely want to know if that information had been omitted if you were expecting it to be there.
Yeah. So in our case, again, we don't really have the time to go through setting this up and verifying everything. But if you were the type of person who was actually going to run this operating system as a daily driver or as a server, you would probably want to verify that what you're installing is from the actual OpenBSD devs.
Right. Yeah, and not someone who's maybe gotten temporary access to their server.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we are going to go against the default and continue without verification. And then it's going to install the things.
Okay, so compared to Arch Linux, it wasn't so bad. Compared to Manjaro, still kind of annoying.
Yeah, Manjaro is a very simplified install process, shall we say? I think it's probably the best, to be honest, out of the distributions I've installed at least.
Oh, really? OpenBSD hasn't changed your mind?
It's a close second. Yeah. No. So, I mean, again, this has a very specific type of user in mind. And even for people that are experienced with Linux, this will take some getting used to because as we'll see here in a bit, there are some key differences in what you're expected to do. So in most Linux distributions, if you don't know how to do something, you Google it. But in OpenBSD, it seems you are very much expected to go read through the man pages and that they should be good enough for you to do that, which it's an interesting way to look at it. And I guess maybe, I haven't used it enough to be sure about that, but that's their idea of what you should be doing. And I don't feel like people would be the happiest if you went around asking them questions without
Without reading through the
look,
man pages
looking at the
extensively.
man pages. Yeah, yeah. There is this. I mean, I'm sure this one guy doesn't speak for the whole OpenBSD community, but there's this one guy, and he's just like, nobody's going to do the learning for you here. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Anyhow, so that's finished. We're done. We don't have anything else to install from the internet or anything. So relinking to create unique kernel. Whatever that means.
Oh, well, the kernel's got to be unique, James. Clearly, if you had the same kernel as everyone, then it would just look like a big bowl of popcorn. Sorry, it's a lot of security terminology. Maybe you just haven't been exposed to it before.
Yeah, maybe that's it. So the default here is to reboot, but that would, in our case, boot us right back into the installer. So I'm going to press H to halt, and it's going to sit there. So I'm going to, well, in a second. Yeah, so it's going to say press any key to reboot. I don't actually want to do that, so I'm going to just power it off at that point. And then once that is done, assuming VirtualBox doesn't want to throw another little fit, there we go. We can go back into the settings on OpenBSD, go into the storage tab, click on our little virtual disk, go to the button we did before, and remove it. And then we can start it up again and finish off the install process.
Okay, cool.
And that's it asking me if I want to switch to scaled mode, because then people can see things. But yeah, I mean, it's not like, if, as you can see, like I just followed the defaults and it's working so far at least. So I think most people could install this if they don't actively mess it up, but using it is probably going to look a little different, because this thing looks older than the first operating systems I used. So
Yeah, what's funny too is like it's not colorized and it's not like user friendly to the point that it's very clear what is it telling you something and what is it expecting input. So sometimes it'll like, like it just have something on the screen that seems like it needs you to do something, and then a second later it just runs and you're like, oh, okay, it didn't need anything. So like for beginners, it's sometimes difficult to know, like, is this asking me for something, or like is it just taking a second to run? Like, so just little things like that.
yeah. So now we are installed, and because we allowed the default there, we haven't actually booted into
I'm
a
sorry,
desktop environment,
James.
which
Do
is
you
fine.
see the network name and the computer name?
Yeah, do you like it?
I
Windows 95.hack.gay.
This is a great OpenBSD system. Please continue.
Exactly. So we are going to log in as root because that's the only account we have set up, and our password again is creatively OpenBSD.
Hey, you have
I don't
mail.
know how to check, I don't know how to check the mail.
Type mail.
How do I check the mail?
Type mail.
No, Cody.
All right, sorry.
Hold on. Look, we can go in. We can use the man pages. So
Okay.
they have this fun command called apropos. Apropos.
Uh-huh.
It's spelled like APROPOS, and you can basically search the man pages for a particular thing. So if we do mail, and I can't actually scroll here, so we'll come back to that, I guess. But it tells you every man page that mentions what's going on. So what we're going to do now, I think, is start the graphical thing so we don't scare people away with a console. But if you were using this as a server, I guess this is probably something what your OpenBSD would look like. So next what we're going to do is rcctl enable the alien thing that we were talking about earlier that we didn't start by default. Xeno DM, is that how you pronounce that? Maybe. So we enable that. I guess that's the equivalent of like a service, and then we start that. And now we have something graphical, and it says at the top Windows95.hack.gay. We're having
uh,
way too much.
I just like it looks like a corporate login. So just like seeing that is just like giving me like a throwback. Okay, wonderful. This is wonderful. I love it.
This is what you wanted.
Yes, this is exactly what I wanted.
Okay, well, we're going to enter the login there. And voila, we have the beautiful, in its own special way, OpenBSD. We have several virtual desktops that we can switch through on the bottom right here. So, that's a pretty
All right,
standard
space efficient.
app. Yeah. And this is most of it, honestly. Like you can left click on the desktop, which I thought was weird, but you can do several things here. Like you have a utilities tab, so what we can open up a calculator.
All
And look
right.
at that. Look at that. You can do your trigonometry and everything.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This is
That's nice.
exciting. No exponential trigonometry now. Tut tut. Anyhow, so there's a couple utilities there that I assume they have written, which come pre-installed. So like top for your performance stuff.
Oh,
And
cool.
yes. So what should we look at if we switch to a new
How do I do
virtual desktop?
something useful with this operating system?
Well, the first thing we should probably do is install Firefox,
Yeah, let's maybe do that.
which I'm guessing is a port because Firefox is built on Rust, and there is no Rust on OpenBSD, which is why I was slightly confused, but I didn't have enough time to actually figure out how they were running Firefox on OpenBSD. So they must have done something funky, either cross-compiling or maybe I don't even know what they did. Anyhow, so to install Firefox here, what we're going to do is package add pkg_add, which is very different to using aptitude or pacman, but there you go. And we are going to pkg add Firefox. And hopefully that just works. It's going to take a minute because installing packages on here takes a reasonable amount of time compared to other operating systems, I feel. But
I wonder if any of the feedback will tell us like what version of Firefox it's installing, or if it's like a port or like in like some weird C wrapper.
82.0.3 is what it's saying. It's installing Python? Python. Okay. I don't know. Maybe they're doing some. Either they rewrote it in C, they're doing some weird emulation, or they cross-compiled somehow.
They just like rewrote Firefox in Python.
not in Python. I don't know why it's installing Python, to be honest with you. That could be a number of things.
That would just be a really great use of someone's time.
It is slow. It is bad. Like I tried to run YouTube and it crashed, which I thought was pretty interesting.
So what activities would like the target user for this like computer, sorry, for this operating system be doing exactly?
Yeah, so they say that they want to be the best development platform possible. So their source is fully accessible to users and developers, so you can see everything that's going on. So in that respect, it makes sense. And from a security respect, that makes sense because you can see this sort of thing. So maybe in a server instance, this is where somebody would use it. I don't actually see a ton of developers using this because it looks like some languages just don't even compile to OpenBSD. So I don't see how that would work exactly. But in other respects, in terms of server, I guess it's pretty secure if nobody's malware is compiled to run on it. So that's one aspect, but that's, security by obscurity. But they claim to be one of the most secure operating systems around, so you have that too. So I feel like mostly what you're going to see here is server applications that are security sensitive and the occasional very strange person that enjoys struggling against their operating system. But,
And I do know some of them. So has
I,
this masterful secure operating system finished installing Firefox?
it has, and by default anyway, I don't actually know how we would open Firefox from their default menu. We could install another desktop environment on top of this, but we probably won't do that here because that can be a little iffy sometimes. But if you were going to start Firefox and detach it from the terminal, I think we just do Firefox space ampersand. And in a second, a window should appear. And look at that.
Look
Here
at
we
what?
go. Firefox.
I don't see nothing.
That would make sense because with our technical hiccup, we didn't restart the screen sharing.
Ah.
So if we fix that really quickly. And maybe in a second, you can see the glorious Firefox.
Okay, yes, we have resolved our technical hiccup, and now I can see the glorious Firefox.
Wonderful. So where would you like to go on Firefox?
I don't know. Let's go to www.crimes.gay.
Well, Cody, we need to be careful because my VPN isn't on this time.
Oh.
This is not UNIX, but yes.
Okay.
So crimes.gay, trusting you not to expose me. We're going to redirect through your canary token and go to the URL that doesn't exist.
Of course. And then let's not switch to my screen quite yet. I'm going to take a look and just see what exactly is going on here. So I'm going to inspect something. So I did get a hit, which is interesting. I can see some geolocation data. I can see some metadata. And I'm going to go through and take a look if there's anything I can look at without exposing you.
What operating system does it say on?
That's what I want to go down to. So, okay, I think we can switch over to mine without forcing Michael to blur. And, all right, so, looks like it doesn't know at all. How about that? It could not figure it out. It literally just doesn't have a. Oh wait, no. OpenBSD AMD 64 R82. Sorry, I completely missed that.
Okay.
The user agent packed a bunch of it, but it didn't really make it very clear.
Okay, so it knows what it is though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's
so
not surprising because it's not privacy orientated. So
it is able to put it in the OpenBSD bucket, which I mean even would separate it and make this distinct from FreeBSD. So if you want to show up to third parties as someone who looks paranoid, then you might want to change your user agent because if you don't want to show up, then you should probably change your user agent or use Tor browser or something like that, because just by default, the user agent does give away some information that would almost definitely put you in the minority of users who are visiting a particular website or using a particular service.
yeah.
Plenty of ways to do that, of course, with user agent changers and stuff like that. But just something to be aware of, that when you are using this, you are leaving a footprint and you're definitely making yourself a little bit more unique than the average person.
Yeah, not many people on OpenBSD.
Yeah, apparently not.
Many people on Linux in general. So.
All right, back to James.
So, I mean, that's how we installed Firefox. What else do you want to look at?
You mentioned that in order to install things here, it's a little bit different than being able to do so, just by going to GitHub. Like if I wanted to install, Wireshark, for example, the process isn't.
Wireshark is actually in the package manager.
Okay, all right, then let's try Wireshark. That seems like a good enough thing to just try installing.
Okay, so if we did pkg_add package add Wireshark, I think a set of the features in the monitor mode is disabled here because reasons. I guess the code wasn't up to scratch, or they didn't want to approve putting it into the default OpenBSD library. But yeah, that'll install. In the meantime, I'm going to go attract my cat because he's being annoying.
Oh yeah, it is about that time, isn't it?
I'm telling you, this guy, he knows because he starts whining right at the end of the...
So I think, like, you know, for all of its quirks and stuff, like, it hasn't been too difficult to install any of these packages. I just wonder that once you get outside this box, you start trying to do stuff that other people are doing on normal operating systems, that like the downsides to this kind of become a little bit more apparent. Like when something's just not included in the default repository.
Yeah, and again, I mean, like, we saw it with the Hunator. We could not actually get that application running on this operating system because the whole language isn't supported by default, at least. And I don't know enough about OpenBSD to say if there's maybe a way to emulate or cross-compile. Maybe there is, given that Firefox is running on it, but I can imagine it's probably not the most straightforward thing in the world.
Yes, that is probably true.
But in a second here, this thing should be done installing. And then we can look at like almost nothing because what this machine would be talking to.
Yeah, so this is also around the time in the show where we should start asking for other shout-outs for operating systems you want to see Jamz suffer through. If there's any other non-Temple OS operating systems, we're saving that one for a special occasion. Then we would love to try them out. So we might even take a look at like Gen 2 and Pen 2, like are two that have been suggested before, although one was... Gen 2 is described as like more of a Linux thing than a security thing, but Pen 2 might be something that has some default tools that might be interesting. Oh, would you look at that?
Look at that. If we select the default thing here, you can see there is nothing. But if we hop over to a new deal and we start Firefox real quick, maybe we'll get something. It's going to take its time, though, of course, because I think like people don't like GUIs in this operating system. I think that's part of what's going on.
They see them as like getting in the way, so they're just like, oh, do you want to override the no GUI rule? This incident will be reported.
Exactly. Bloat. But yeah, as you can see here, we kind of went to crimes.gay again, and if I scroll,
it sent a bunch of stuff.
What's there? This is a request to something. I don't use...
Oh, you got DNS. There's some DNS requests right there. Those are easy.
Okay. Yeah, DNS. And then HTTP.
Oh, HTTP. If you just double click that, does it do anything?
This is a request to a Firefox thing. This is...
If you double click on the DNS request in the upper window, does it do anything? Yeah, cool. Okay, that's nice.
So things still seem to vaguely work. Hold on, let me see if I can get... Can I filter by protocol? There we go. And then it'll be one of the HTTP ones. Anyhow, somewhere in here there will be a crimes.gay. I don't feel desperately needing to find it.
Oh yeah, so the way I always find it is if you scroll up to one of the DNS requests, click on it, and then in the attached, click on any of those, and then click on the domain name system response at the bottom and expand that. And usually you see questions and answers, or queries and answers.
Okay, so Cloudflare stuff.
Yeah, so it's doing Cloudflare stuff.
Okay.
You can see like all the specifics for like where it's getting it, and if you go up to the answer or queries, it should basically tell you what the original question was that it's answering. So like you can start to unpack these requests and start like understanding. Yeah.
So this is Mozilla metric stuff, it looks like, mostly.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so that wasn't even related to, that was you opening up Firefox. It wasn't even related to your navigating to hack.k. But the other thing I like about that is if you close it, not to get into like a Wireshark tutorial, but if you close it and then go down and click on domain system response in the middle window and expand that, you can right mouse click on like any part of that and use it as its own search field. So like if you use the domain, the whatever the Firefox telemetry stuff was in the query, you can search by query and maybe find, yeah. So right mouse click that and then apply as filter selected. So like now, like that's a huge request, but like that request is actually being used as a search filter. So you can see every DNS request that went out to that specific, whatever it is.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Like Wireshark is so easy to use. Like once you start getting used to how to write filters and stuff on the fly, but it's like absolutely useless without it. Okay, cool. Well, we got started with some basic stuff. Having Wireshark without having monitor mode is kind of a bummer for me. I'm going to be honest. Like, it's just a lot more useful when you're able to sniff other things. Oh, wow. Look at that butterball. It's just so attentive today.
Butterball is the interesting things I've ever heard somebody call a cat.
Just round.
It's round.
That's nice. It's good to see. But yeah, so what's your opinion of OpenBSD after all this? Is this your new secure operating system, or are you sticking with Quebs?
Quebs. I mean, I could see people running this inside of Quebs actually, but mostly I think people that are using this are going to be either a little crazy or running it on a server for a very specific purpose. I think they have sort of email server implementations and stuff like that. So I feel like that's something that'll be most of the use case. And then outside of that, a few strange people using this as their main desktop OS.
Okay, you heard it from Jamz first. The only people that use OpenBSD are insane. Great to have you on the show, Jamz. Always nice to have non-controversial topics. Hope this doesn't make anybody mad. But yeah, it is kind of a strange choice for like a daily driver operating system for like your desktop computer. Like, I mean, you could do it. And as I said, like our friend Ian was very well versed with OpenBSD, likes it a lot, and enjoyed writing the tutorial. I do not think that Ian uses OpenBSD as their daily driver. So, there's a little bit of trade-offs here, but hey, it is a really cool operating system. Again, it looks like it's supported on the Raspberry Pi. So if you just wanted to try this out on a Raspberry Pi system, we haven't tried it out on the stream, but it's kind of an interesting way you could try this out on a low-cost computer that, if it starts smoking, isn't really that big of a deal. So
yeah, or if you can run it in a VM, try that too. But
exactly. All right, well, that's gonna do it for our show today. I think we're running out of security-focused operating systems, so we really need some more suggestions. We're going to try out some more, but hopefully we'll be able to provide a pretty broad comparison, because some of these I've just never gotten the chance to really try out, and I'm really enjoying sitting over James's shoulder while he suffers through like installing like basic packages that he himself has written in another operating system. And I do have to say, it is a humbling experience to have to rescind our claim that the Hunator is a fully cross-platform operating system, because now we are truly excluding those OpenBSD folk, those crazy brave souls that choose to use it as their daily driver.
I mean, it was never like truly cross-platform. Like, it never ran on Temple OS.
I was gonna say, does it run on Temple OS? Are you sure? Have you tried it?
I haven't tried it. What do we do? We actually tested Linux, Mac OS, and Windows, because it's already hard even with like Rust's tools. It's interesting to try and get serial ports to behave the same way across all those platforms. So yeah, I mean, if they added Rust support, or if Rust added OpenBSD support rather, it would be an interesting thing to see if it worked. But for now, it looks like that's kind of out of the question.
Yeah, and I've got some really bad news. It looks like Rust is not supported on Temple OS as well. Another stunning loss for the Rust fanboy community. Shut out of yet another operating system as part of the continued discrimination against your kind. I'm so sorry that you Rust people have to suffer such discrimination, Jamz, as to be just shut out of all these, really interesting operating systems.
Yeah, I really wanted to run Temple OS as a daily driver,
I guess you'll have to, power your building with some other distribution. Oh, well.
Exactly.
All right, guys, I think that's all we've got today. I also want to give a shout out to the Verona's brand account that has our sometimes co-host Killian, who does the threat update. I want to give a shout out to Thomas, who is now out for blood, keeping us honest with our time so we don't run over. And in the interest of safety, James, where should people follow you if they want to follow you in what life you have left?
At JamzDev on Twitter.
Cool. So you can follow at JamzDev on Twitter if you want to follow James, at Cody Kinsey on Twitter if you want to follow me. You can see more of my content on hack.gay. And per always, this is, I guess, the three of us on on Hacking with Friends. And we'll see you next time. Bye.